Hi everyone, lovely to have you with us this afternoon. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Anna and I'm the Head of Support Services at Ovacome. So I work with my team, Catherine, Annie, Joe and Serica. And just to say, please do get in touch with us. If there's any information that you need or any support, anything you want to talk through, then please do contact us. We're always really pleased to hear from you. We're available 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Monday to Friday. And you can get in touch with us through our support line, through email. You can text us, instant chat through our website. We can arrange a Zoom one-to-one video call. And we also have an online forum called My Ovacome, where you can make contact with other people who are also affected by ovarian cancer. So I'm delighted to welcome Rafal Szaniawsk, who's an accredited coach, and he's going to speak to us today about supporting someone with an ovarian cancer diagnosis. So I will hand over to Raf.
Thank you. I just want to comment because you perfectly pronounced my last name, which I know is complete nightmare. And that's a complete story for different webinar. I actually don't know my real last name. I need to use the one that I was given as I know at birth, but it's a totally different story. But yes, good afternoon or good evening for some of you. Welcome. And I'm really pleased and really happy to be today talking about supporting someone with ovarian cancer diagnosis. So I'm just going to start sharing. I think I need to ask one of you to make me a co-host, and then I can.
Sorry.
That's all right. Don't worry.
Perfect.
Super. Thank you. Hopefully this will work. Hopefully you can see my screen. Yes, super. I had to do it as a PDF because I'm a technically challenged human. But anyway, so welcome and thank you, Ovacome, for giving me opportunity to talk to all of you today. And 2 words about me. Why am I actually talking to you? Yes, so as Anna said, I am an accredited coach and I have quite a few different letters by my name, which is great. But I think most importantly is that I'm also a son of an ovarian cancer patient. And it happened a few years ago when my mom was diagnosed, and it has been a life-changing event in the life of my family, my personal life. And since then, I decided to use the skills and actually my story to help others, because I know how challenging, difficult, and sometimes simply lonely the experience can be, especially if you're a carer of someone who has been diagnosed with an ovarian cancer. So while I will be talking about some tips to help you navigate the journey, I want to just say that this subject is also emotional to me. I shared with the ladies before that when I was compiling the final version of the draft and I was going through the slides, I really had those moments when I was reflecting and having flashbacks of my experience with my mom. I will be sharing some of the stories as well, because I hope that they will also help you to put some of those tips in the context. And I will actually share some of those tips and experiences, because I know that sometimes theory is great, but actually then when we try to basically do those things in our everyday interactions with the person we love and we care for, we may feel slightly less courageous to do them. So hopefully that will inspire you to become empowered to really be the best carer you can be. So the agenda today is that, yes, we had a small introduction. I will very briefly talk about the Elizabeth Kubler model. It's a bit of a theory, but it's quite useful. And very often when it's pitched, it's really misconstrued. And then we'll talk about 14 tips. I promise I won't bore you. It will be very structured and very brief. And then we will open floor for any of your questions. And then at the end, I will say massive thank you again. So you may sometimes see this picture or this name basically plastered all over the internet when you try to find some information. And that very often is presented as Kubler-Ross grief cycle. So I want to tell you that this really actually is not about grief cycle. It was designed not for grief, but for actually terminal diagnosis. So Elizabeth Kubler-Ross spent her life and her work dedicating herself to speaking with people who have had the terminal diagnosis. And this model, as we see the cycle, is really helpful and can be really helpful in understanding the emotional landscape after the diagnosis. So what I did here, and I tried to find online actually a picture when there's no grief word, because it shouldn't be there. But what I want to maybe indicate here is that this cycle is really useful for all of us carer to understand what may be the emotional landscape of the person who received the diagnosis. So as you can see, there are a few stages. There's the denial, the anger, the bargaining, the depression, and finally the acceptance. But what I want to really indicate is that it doesn't happen in this way very often. It's not linear. It doesn't happen that first there's denial, there's an anger, then we move to bargaining. You will see that some of the people we love and we care for, they move between those stages. You will see them first being in denial, then go through the anger, then go to bargaining, and then suddenly go back to the denial. So what I encourage all of us really to do is just to be mindful and be aware of this, that this is the emotional ocean, this is the emotional landscape for the person who receives the diagnosis that may be very difficult, maybe terminal, but this really helps, and it really helped me as well sometimes to really understand what emotions can be triggered in different stages of navigating the landscape that really is created when the diagnosis happens. So now I will talk about those 14 tips that can be really, really useful for you when you navigate the landscape with the person who has been diagnosed. I think the first one, from my perspective, is to listen actively. And I do appreciate that it can be hard really to focus and it can be really hard to focus only on listening when you try to help. But I encourage all of us really to spend the first, maybe not months, but to spend a decent chunk of time just listening to the other person, really letting them express their feelings, help them name those feelings, because very often they may be confused, they may have conflicting emotions circulating in their head. So helping them express those feelings, those emotions, even if those feelings make you uncomfortable. So it will be an exercise, it is for all of us, exercise sometimes in being comfortable with the discomfort. But there is a psychological, extremely helpful tool, which is called Name It to Tame It. And this really is helpful because once you name the emotion and the feeling, it's much easier to tame this emotion and to navigate this. It's great to offer comfort for sharing. And obviously, when you invite someone to share, to talk, it's important never to judge and really don't interrupt. So let them speak, let them talk about how they feel, what they need, and be non-judgmental. Don't interrupt them, and really get really familiar and get maybe accustomed to being uncomfortable. As I've experienced in my experience with my mom, there were those moments when it felt extremely uncomfortable, but this discomfort really helped basically us, both of us, me and my mom, to go to the places that we wouldn't be able to go through without those conversations about how she felt, what she needed, what was her state of mind in this particular day. What is also really important when we think about listening actively is really listening with your whole person. So really important is your body language. Things like nodding, things like leaning into the person, really being present with the other person. Obviously things like simple things like obviously not texting or not being on the phone, really maintaining eye contact. Sometimes it may be difficult because those conversations, those words that we say might be really difficult and uncomfortable. But it's as much as you are able to, just be as present as you are, listening with your whole person. We'll talk about some of those, the other tips, especially when those conversations can be difficult and can be emotional, how to stay in these conversations, or how to sometimes just find the place and time, or even sometimes when to pause the conversation when you feel it's not going to be helpful to, especially the person who has been diagnosed. So the first thing, listen actively. Listen let them express their emotions, their feelings, get comfortable with discomfort, and then just offer them comfort for sharing. Do not judge them and listen with your body as well. The second tip is really deal with your feelings first. So very often when we're in the mode of caring for someone, like I did, we go into the mode of being a superhuman, right? We try to arrange, be organized, do things. And then we sometimes shut our emotions like I did. But the first thing I would like you to really allow yourself to feel. And again, to name the emotions you're feeling. This will be an ocean. It will be anything from hope to despair, to fear, to anxiety, to helplessness. Name it, just name it. Anything will probably pop up. But as I said a moment ago, naming your emotions is extremely helpful and it's critical. Once you name it, you can work through this, you can tame it in reality. And once you face your emotions, you can be more attentive, you can be really more helpful. So once you acknowledge what you're feeling and then you're kind of, I don't say comfortable with them, but at least you're at peace with, okay, I'm feeling anxiety about what's going to happen with us, with the family, with my mom, with somebody else, then you can finally work through this and not ignore them, but you can then focus your attention on being helpful or being attentive there. If you find it very often, and that's very, very important, and that will be a thread throughout today's chat, if you find something difficult, if you find it difficult, for example, to deal with your emotions, seek support. You are not alone. Like, we are here meeting because Ovacome is such a fantastic organization. They have resources, they have people who can help you. I tried to do things on my own, but then I realized that only when I ask for support, I'm actually able to be much more helpful. So if you find any of those tips today or any of those moments really difficult and you don't think you can handle them on their own, it's absolutely fine to ask for help. I remember the conversation with my sister when my mom's diagnosis happened shortly after, and we said, hey, there's no manual in reality how to deal with all those things. And we asked each other to help each other, and then we asked some specialists to help us because we were not able to do some of those things. We were not able to process some of those things. And what is really important here is that you will be navigating between hope and grief. It will be sometimes anticipatory grief. You may want to read about this as well, but the oscillation between the emotions will happen. And as the treatment progresses, there will be better days, there will be worse days because they will happen. And as a result, you will oscillate between certain emotions, and those will be more positive and less positive. And that's absolutely normal. It's absolutely human. And acknowledging that this will happen and trying to find the support system for yourself is absolutely critical then to be able to be helpful to the person who's actually going through treatment. So listen actively, deal with your emotions first. The next thing is, I think for me, extremely, extremely important, and it is really emotional. Say what you need. Well, tell them how you feel about them. And even if our gestures are as loving and caring as they can be, words here are more powerful than gestures. Love is powerful, just as care, just as appreciation. Affirm them, let them know that they are seen, they are valued. I think that thinking about my example, my mom's diagnosis suddenly made me so much more courageous to say, I love you, and to say it to my mom, to my sister, my father, things we in our family, we didn't say. We were more focused on saying what didn't work. But once we realized that actually there's power in saying, I love you, I care for you, you mean so much to me, that was a transformational experience. And now I regret it only happened when my mom was diagnosed. So I encourage you, it's extremely, extremely helpful. It's extremely powerful for the person who is going through the experience but it will transform your life as well, just as it did with me, as it did with thousands of other families. Say what you need. Tell them how you feel about them. Tell them how much they mean to you. It's absolutely an amazing experience. And I'm sure you've all done it, but don't stop. Do more of it. Do it every day. Do it every time you feel like doing it. That's probably, out of any tip here, this is probably the most emotional, important from my perspective, and probably the most transformational that I can say it has been from my perspective and in my experience. The next one is get in their shoes. That is a very single bullet point here. And as I appreciate, we are not able to entirely get in their shoes and feel like they feel. But there will be those better and worse days. And it's important to realize that they are going through one of the most probably terrifying period in their lives, an experience of their lives. And if you imagine yourself for a moment in their position, there will be a much different level of empathy in you. And sometimes when, especially those situations will happen when you feel like you're stuck, you're challenged, you can't cope, or there is some tension between you and the person who has been diagnosed, it may happen. It will help you to take a different perspective, to approach the situation from a slightly different angle, and ultimately to go through the situation to move forward in a much more constructive and empowering way. So imagining yourself in their position is a controversial, but is really an important part of the journey of being a carer. And it really will help you to become a better carer and to feel like you're a better carer, which is really, really extremely important as well. The next one is just help, be their right hand. So yes, the diagnosis is an extremely life-changing moment, but life goes on despite the diagnosis. There are bills to be paid, there's admin to be done, there are things, chores that need to happen. So help in daily tasks, but when you offer, you be specific. So can I come over tomorrow afternoon and do the laundry? Can I come on Saturday and hoover the floor? This is really important. Do not ask, oh, can I help you at all? Offer something and be specific. It's really much better way of communicating with the person who has been diagnosed, who might need your help, much more empowering to both of you and much more constructive. So be their right hand, offer to pay their bills, offer to do some admin for them, especially when they go through some of the treatments which make them weak or make them feel not up to the task. But remember here, when you offer your help, be specific. Can I help you pay the bills this month? Can I don't know, mow the lawn? Can I trim the bushes in the garden? Can I clean the kitchen? Offer and be specific. It's very, very important. If you decide to do and what you do to be helpful, try to approach with this formula, so to say. Help, accompany them. So in the previous one, we talked about completing some daily tasks for them. This one is trickier. So we know that going to treatment, going to hospital, it's scary, first of all, and it's also logistics, a lot of things that need to happen. So go to the appointments with them if you can. I know that going through treatment and being a carer is also a challenge from the logistic point of view, to arrange the transportation, to go there, take time off. And I appreciate that this is not something that all of us can do, but if you can do, go to the appointments with them, to the hospital, to chemo. Now, obviously, because it's their life, it's their treatment, it's their right, please ask for permission to join them. And I'm going to laugh a bit here because my mom is a very stubborn woman. And she was always like, no, I don't want you there. No, I don't want you to see me like this, right? Or I will be fine. So you have to respect if they don't want you to be, for example, in the treatment room with them. But if that's the case, then offer, okay, I'm fine to sit in the waiting room, or I'm fine to pick you up afterwards. So it is a dialogue here to offer to be there, to be as comfortable as you are, for example, going and sitting with them at their chemo room, or picking them up from the hospital. But it's a dialogue and finding and respecting the boundaries. With my mom, we negotiated that I'm just going to take her to the chemo appointment and pick her up. So she didn't want me to stay for the whole day and to sit with her there, right? For example. So that was the way we agreed that we would work together, but it was helpful. She felt, you could see that she felt supported, and also she felt empowered. She didn't ever want it to be a burden, obviously, but that arrangement was really something that she appreciated afterwards. So ask for permission, but also join them, go to the appointments. Ask if you are in a position when they agreed for you to be in the meetings, that is an amazing opportunity for you. Ask questions in the meetings, take notes, be supportive, but let them decide, obviously. So if you are in the place where you can accompany them in the doctor's room, for example, just be useful and be supportive in a way that, you know, you take notes, be their kind of PA in a way, because they may be sometimes not remembering all the information, especially there's a lot. So take notes, get the information, be supportive, but remember, you need to let them decide. This is their life, this is their disease in a way, and this is their right to decide about treatment. But it's extremely, extremely helpful. So if any of you have chance, it is an amazing opportunity to be really supportive when you have a chance, when you have permission to sit with them in the room with a doctor, with the nurse, with the chemo team, because you will help them by having all the right information, and then you can help when you have a conversation about, for example, next steps or side effects or what else needs to happen. The next one is respect their needs, especially for being alone. It's sometimes difficult, I didn't know what word I should use, to respect when they want to be alone. Especially when sometimes there are difficult moments in the treatment and you would like to spend most time with them, but they want to be alone. You need to respect this. What is really important is to monitor visitors. So if you are in a place where, or if the person is really receiving a lot of visitors or visitors in general, you may want to really be mindful of what's the balance between allowing the others and the person who is going through the treatment to interact, and the situation being maybe overwhelming or maybe tiring to the person who is going through the treatment. And it's really important then to let the loved one know that they don't need to be available or sociable. I vividly remember a conversation with my mom when she says, everyone is trying to call me and ask me how I am and everything, and I just don't want this. I don't want to tell people that I'm fine, I'm not fine. And she said, I just need rest, right? And she felt guilty that she was feeling like this. So we had a long conversation about them, and we actually stepped in to make sure that we explained that mom is not going to, you know, respond for some time. She's not going to pick up the phone. She just needs rest time, and that's it, right? But again, having the conversation made me realize that she had certain emotions and feelings around being or not being available and how she shows up in her illness, in her disease. And we had this conversation which allowed both of us, me and her, to come up with a solution that was respectful, and it was really a solution that helped her navigate the next difficult stage of her treatment. So I encourage you, especially here, to respect their needs, especially when they want to be alone. Really be mindful of their kind of interactions and how they feel about this. This might be a cultural pattern sometimes. There might be some personality type thing here, like they're more sociable, less sociable. It is also about timing. You know, if they go through treatment, there will be periods when they feel weaker, stronger. there will be periods when there are suddenly some side effects which make them feel more vulnerable to being around other people, to interact with other people. So that really is a dynamics I would really like you to just pay attention to and be more mindful of, and then it will make you a much better carer as well. Gather information. So we know that cancer diagnosis and ovarian cancer diagnosis really triggers a lot of anxiety and fear. It's a natural thing. And especially when we lack information. So if there are information gaps, we fill those gaps with potentially information that is not helpful, that may be even scary, that may be not constructive, and that might not help us as a carer, but also the person who is diagnosed. So we know that information eases anxiety and fear. So I encourage you to learn how to research ovarian cancer and really to find the websites like Ovacome that are trustworthy. I'm sure you use Dr. Google, like all of us, we just Google things, but that may not be the most constructive way of finding information. So find few resources and sources of resources that are useful, trustworthy, and reliable, and stick to those, because that will help you be better informed and informed in a way that is really helpful to you as a carer and to the person who's going through the treatment. And that's something, the last point is something that can be very, very difficult. Respect that they may not want some latest info on clinical trials and treatments. So as the treatments, as the medicines are being developed, there's progress in a lot of things, and there are a lot of things that happen. And it's natural that when we see some hope in some new treatment, some new clinical trial, we want to bring it to the attention to the person who is diagnosed, or maybe to their doctor, which is amazing, obviously, and very often this is helpful. However, you may experience the situation when someone does not want to hear it, does not want to engage in conversation about this, or maybe even decides to refuse those things. And you have to respect this. Again, it will go back to, as much as we want to be helpful and we want the best for this person, being helpful here means that we need to respect what they think and what they want. So you can be informative, you can try to explain, but if someone says no, we need to respect that. And that can be sometimes challenging, it can be difficult. There's an aspect here of this element which I didn't put on the slide, but now when I think about this, that also is important. So what I experienced is that suddenly some people started messaging me, it's like with, let's call it best wishes, but also best advice, right? People would email you or message you maybe saying, oh, you should try this. Why don't you try this? Why haven't you tried that? And it's really important to create some boundaries around that, because this can be helpful, obviously, but if you see that some of those pieces of advice are not helpful, or maybe the people who offer you those pieces of advice sometimes very unsolicited, they may actually create sense of discomfort or potentially send you information that is harmful. It's important for your own mental health, but also for the process of treatment and for the dynamics between you and the person who is going through the treatment, is to create the boundaries and potentially sometimes stop the person, or basically create the boundary of not hearing or reading this information. That something is, I thought about this now because it happened to me, and it was really in a way unpleasant, uncomfortable, but it was the right thing to do because we wanted to avoid the situation when we are bombarded by really, well, unfortunate, let's put it like this, information. The additional dynamics was that my mom is a doctor, so everyone was actually offering advice like, you know, oh, she's a doctor and she's going through treatment, she's sick, how come, right? So creating boundary and kind of information flow is going to help you as well to be helpful, to be supportive, and to create the environment and the dynamics for you and for the person who's going through treatment that is the best and is serving the treatment and healing as well. The next one, don't hide things from them or from other loved ones. Tough one, yes. Honesty is needed to make the decisions that fit their needs, even if honesty is painful. Hiding information doesn't protect anybody. And I know that sounds easier than it actually is in reality. And I've been there myself. And sometimes you just feel like you're protecting somebody, but not offering all the information. But this is something that we need to remember, we need to do. Honesty here is absolutely critical for those decisions to be made that fit their needs, even if this honesty is painful. And hiding information doesn't protect anybody. So, and it can be difficult, it can be challenging, it can create certain dynamics in the family system or in the closed relatives and friends environment. But it really is important to be as transparent as possible, respecting the confidentiality and obviously patients' wishes, but being honest with them, especially being honest with the environment and not hiding information is really, really important. Helping people find support. So not everyone would like it, but talk with them about support groups, about meeting with others who go through cancer journey. As much as we can be super helpful, and we are super helpful, we are not people who go through treatment. And sometimes for some of those patients, this is beneficial. This is something that would help them to meet others who are in a similar or very similar position that they are. So talk with them about some support groups and maybe meetings others who go through cancer journey. Highlight some benefits of that and your willingness to support. I can help you find this group. I can take you there. I can offer something else, but don't press. Offer and leave the door open. My mom, for example, was very reluctant to speak with a psycho-oncologist who was a part of our package when she was going through treatment. And she was very reluctant. She said she didn't need it. She's going through the journey like a star, right? We didn't press. We said it's on offer. And I kept talking about this every time she was going through chemo. I was just saying, remember, I know I said this, but remember that the psychotherapist, psycho-oncologist is there. You can always chat with her. And she only decided in her, I think, 4 or 5 cycles of chemo to actually talk with this person. And she found it extremely beneficial, but she needed to find, we needed to wait for the right timing. So she knew there was an offer, we didn't press her, and she decided to use this support offer that she had. So here, just make them aware of the support options there are, talk about the benefits, just gather what their thoughts are, and then don't press, but offer and leave the door open. Stay open, flex your style. So allow and listen to other family members' opinions, even if they are very different than yours. So here it's really about being open-minded to what other members, for example, of the family have to say. Obviously with some boundaries, as I said before, be open-minded, listen to their opinions, and then you can come with the decision. And remember that you have the common goal, and the common goal is support the patient. So when you talk with other family members, they may have very different than yours, opinion than yours. But remembering one thing, you all have the same common goal, which is to support the patient. Will help you navigate those sometimes contrasting different opinions and living those conversations with some clarity about what you actually want to either do or maybe advise to the patient. But remember that it's important sometimes to have those conversations, to challenge other family members, to ask them for opinion. But remember, and sometimes remind them, all of the people participating in those discussions, that you have the common goal. It is to support the patient. And the last one, which is, I think the last one is, don't shy away from humor and laughter. So humor can be healing, but it's important to be sensitive to timing and to their need to express grief. And be ready to smile and laugh. And I will give you an example. So when my mom went through it was even before the first chemo session, we knew that she would lose her hair. So proactively, we decided to organize a family trip to a shop to buy her a wig. So it was me, my sister, and my mom. So we organized this as a nice trip to find the right wig, to try them on. And once she decided to, and she actually bought the one that she liked, we decided to give her a name. So the name, the wig's name was Helen. And we then stopped saying wig, but she says, oh, do you have Helen with you? Or do we need to take Helen? Do we need to wash Helen, right? And it was really one of the ideas that we had that, you know, turning maybe this very challenging situation into something that is bonding for us, obviously, but also we didn't decide to shy away from humor, because my mom has a sense of humor. So we said, why don't we tap into this and give a wig a name, right? Why not? Why not try things like that? So be creative about this. Remember that laughter should always also be present throughout the treatment. It's extremely important. Yes, there will be days when you don't feel like laughing, but those not be all the days. That there will be days for all of you to laugh, to smile, to have a moment of making jokes. And that is really, really important. And it does not mean the situation is not serious. It does not mean that you in any way disregard the gravity of the situation. No, absolutely not. It actually means that you are able to really still be human and be yourself going through this and navigating this journey. And for me, that really was, in a way, at the beginning, like, wow, why are we doing this? But then when I saw her face, when I saw how we actually went through this whole experience, I decided that that was really important. And my mom appreciated this. She says that really helped her stay sane. Take care of yourself. You can only support when you sleep enough, eat properly, rest, maintain balance, and meet your needs. Taking care of yourself is needed. That is a difficult one because sometimes it feels very egoistic. How can I take a day off and then go for a trip or go to the cinema when my mom is going through cancer treatment, right? So that's something that I encourage you, first of all, to acknowledge that you are only helpful if you are taking care of yourself. And you need to think about what taking care of yourself means for you. Definitely some basic things like sleeping, eating, resting, but maybe there's something else you need in order to be fully present and fully supportive when you are needed. Now, word of advice, if I can too, if you struggle with this, I would encourage you to talk to someone about this, either in a support group and maybe share experiences with others who are in a similar position, or talk to a specialist, because that really is really, really, really important. Simply, if you don't remember about your needs and taking care of yourself, at some point you will not be able to support them. And that is really very unfortunate and very difficult place to be, because then it will be a very difficult emotional for you. So yes, I'm not going to just pretend to be wise here. It was difficult for me, and it took me a few attempts to get it more or less right. And I still feel guilty now after a few years, thinking that I maybe wasn't the best carer I should have been. Maybe I wasn't offering as much as I should have or could have. And maybe those things like going away for a weekend was a really bad and egoist and selfish idea. I still have those emotions. But when I talk with my sister, who was the other carer, we realized and we spoke about this, that in order for both of us to function, still work, function, and help her go through the treatment, we also need to make sure that we take care of ourselves. And that really is extremely important. As you see, I talk about a lot of things that are very, very important. Now, before I stop sharing, and we'll go into Q&A, and I'm aware of the time, I just want to, as I always say, to say those three things: be you, be kind, and be gentle. And those three things you should, I encourage you to apply to yourself and to others. But as a carer, I really invite you to be you, be yourself, to be kind to yourself, and to be gentle with yourself. It is a journey. It is a difficult emotional journey. It is a journey that will empower you, that will transform your life, that will change your life in a way that you would never expect. You will be a different person when the journey is over. You will be so much richer, so much different. You are amazing the way you are. You are absolutely fantastic carers, I'm sure. Just remember that you can be as helpful as you are when you're human, when you're self, and when you navigate this with certain level of self-compassion and using some of those tips I shared. Just remember you're never alone. If you feel stuck or doubt something, just ask for help. And the other things, you will figure it out. You are capable of doing that. And like Ovacome is here to help. And I'm sure you have also support systems. So I'm just going to stop sharing and maybe we'll see if we have any questions.
Thank you so much, Raf. Thank you for such an honest and really, really helpful talk that I'm sure will mean a lot to people. If anyone has any questions that they'd like to ask, we've got about 15 minutes. So please do drop any questions, as Nina mentioned at the beginning, into the Q&A or into the chat box, and I'll read them out for Raf. I won't read out any identifying information, so nothing that's personally identifying for you or the person that that you're supporting, but I'll read out the questions. So any questions at all, please do drop them into either the Q&A or the chat box. And while we're seeing if any questions come in, Raf, I just wanted to ask you, you spoke, I was really interested in what you were saying about those listening skills and being very present and being able to talk about uncomfortable things. And I wondered if you had any tips for people, perhaps if they're having those conversations and their own feelings start to feel overwhelming, and so they're aware that they're not listening quite as much because they're feeling very overwhelmed. And do you have any suggestions for how people manage that sort of in that moment?
I think one of it will happen, and I think one of the basic things is to really acknowledge and name it in your head. Like, I'm feeling really overwhelmed. I mean, it's really acknowledging. It's like I lost track. I'm not sure what she's saying. Right? I'm really overwhelmed. I have a physical reaction sometimes. It's really just acknowledging in your head and just being honest sometimes with the other person. Say, you know what? It's really, really. I'm not even outside. I don't say it's really difficult. It's like, actually, it's a good question because now I'm trying to think what I did with my mom when it was like, for me, it was really about not pretending, but in my head, just acknowledging I'm overwhelmed, I'm struggling with this, but I am here to go through this still. So it was then this, for me, it was just, okay, but then I want to focus on her and then get kind of curious about the things that she's going to tell me. So the first thing is to acknowledge what you're feeling and experiencing, but then shift your attention, say, this is what's happening. I will deal with it when we finish. But now I'm going to get curious about what she's telling me and see what's the story there. That is really something that helped me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So, no questions from anyone yet. I think a sign that how helpful and thorough your talk.
Well, hopefully.
Was there anything else that you wanted to add that perhaps you were hoping that we had a bit more time for? Was there anything that you wanted to add at all?
I think I can mention the last part. I think it's just very acknowledging that we are humans and that you are human going through this experience. And then you don't have to have the answers to all of those challenges and questions that will pop up on the journey. That there's no, yes, there will be like a guide, as we even discussed, there are tips and ideas, but there's no real manual how to be a carer in every single cancer diagnosis case, because every story is different. We all live different lives. We are living in a different environment, family settings, all sorts of conditions, right? So your journey will be super individual, and you will find those days when you feel stuck or maybe not knowing some of those answers. And absolutely human and normal. And this is the moment when you tap into you being human, saying, I don't know, I need to check. Let me ask. You go to resources like Ovacome, you speak with people who may be your support system. But on the other hand, once you are in those situations, those conversations with those patients, also be honest. They don't expect sometimes for you to know all the answers or to be the superhumans. Sometimes just saying, I'm really sorry you're going through this. I don't know how to help you. It's sometimes the most powerful thing you could do. Sometimes the most powerful thing I could do to my mom was actually hold her hand and not say anything. In one of the things that I remember till this moment, and I might get emotional, apologies, but one of the most difficult days and moments in her journey was when she was really struggling and she had high fever and we thought we are losing her. And I couldn't communicate with her a lot. She wasn't really talking sense and I wasn't getting through her. But what was the most powerful moment in this moment was really holding her hand for those few hours.
Mm. Yeah.
And that was the most powerful thing to do.
Yeah.
Apologies. Yeah.
No, not at all. Not at all. I think it just shows, how important this talk is and how meaningful and how powerful what you're saying and all the advice that you're giving and the tips and everything is so important for people. And thank you for your honesty and thank you for sharing your experience. And I think you're absolutely right that there's certainly plenty of research that demonstrates that people who, as you say, we may not be able to communicate with verbally anymore, are still aware of touch and still respond to that touch and will still feel that comfort. So you're absolutely right that it's such a powerful thing to do at any time, but certainly in moments like that when perhaps we're not able to communicate verbally anymore, we're not sure excuse me, what they're taking in from us speaking to them. Touch is always so very powerful. Absolutely.
Yeah. On a positive note, things like, for example, my mom after chemo, she suddenly said, you know what, I want to go to McDonald's. She's not a person who would normally eat fast food. And she was like, oh, screw this, pardon my French. She was like, screw this, I want burger and fries. What can you do, right? Let's go. That was our regular tradition. After chemo, surprise, surprise, she could still eat. She wasn't having those vomiting things. She was like, yeah, let's go for McDonald's, right? So taking mom to McDonald's, she had her burger, her chips, and there you go. So it is an emotional journey. You will discover things you would never think and do before. But as I said, just be honest, be yourself, ask for help when you need, and you will navigate this with, with confidence and sense of being helpful, and that's really important. Sometimes being with someone is the most helpful thing you can do, nothing else. I think we have one question maybe.
Yeah, we've had a question come in. So someone's saying that there isn't a question, but they're sharing, and it's really supporting what you were saying. Absolutely, that she's saying what she found helpful from her husband when she needed his care through chemo was our honesty with, I'm finding this really hard and I'm hanging on by my fingernails, and other expressions. With hindsight, we are both really pleased that we learned to have an honesty we've not had to develop before. And thank you, Rafal.
Thank you for sharing this, the person who shared with us, because yes, that proves also that the honesty element is something that we suddenly discover in the treatment journey, and that's a great win, if you can say, in this situation, right?
Absolutely. I'll just let people know, that Raf mentioned accessing support groups, and we do have our friends and family group. So for those of you who are supporting someone with ovarian cancer, you'd be very welcome to come along to that. It's the last Tuesday of every month, so there's one next week, and it's 5 until 7 o'clock. You don't have to stay for the whole session. Also, if you're not sure about the support group and you'd like to know more, then please do get in touch with us at the support service, and we'd be really happy to talk it through with you. And someone else has commented, thank you for such an excellent presentation and for talking about your own personal experience. It's been very helpful.
Thank you so much.
And was there anything else that anyone wanted to share, comment, or ask? Just give it a few moments. Okay, well, Rafa's very kindly said that he'd be happy to answer questions that come up afterwards as well. So, so if there's anything that you'd like us to ask him on your behalf, we can pass those on. But we'll come to an end if there's no further questions or comments, and I'll hand back to Nina. But before I do, was there anything just finally that you wanted to add at all, Raf?
I just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity to speak with you, and obviously for all of you who attended today, and just wanted to say good luck and be kind and be gentle. That would be my final message.